Hello, Brobs. We're back with Heinz. I can't even say it. Heinz Evis's Vampire, a 1934 translation of his earlier book. Let's open this. So I'm going to have to look at the screen. We are on chapter 10. The book has disappointed me so far. More disappointed is the fact that I paid $200 for it. Quite a rare book, but not a rare, but rare. Very disappointed in this book so far. First two books in the Frank Braun trilogy were pretty good books, and I paid much less for them. But this one doesn't live up to its name, and it's more or less a failure of a book to me. It's disjointed. But here we go. Chapter 10, Topazes. Frank Braun saw his last visitor to the door. "Anybody else waiting for me?" he asked Rosius. "Yes, a man. I will show him in." Frank Braun fell into a chair, supporting his arms on the table, his head dropping heavily into his hands. He felt tired tonight, unspeakably tired and drained. "I am no longer a human being," he thought. "I am an inflated pig's bladder. I act as if I were big and fat, and I make a great deal of noise when I hit the floor, but I am hollow and empty inside, very empty." Rosius brought in a shabbily dressed man. He was pockmarked, bull-necked, and bow-legged. His greasy black hair was slicked down over his forehead. He smelled of stable and whiskey. Without a word of greeting, he stepped up close and awkwardly produced a dirty card which he held under Frank Braun's nose. It was Tewes's calling card. "Perhaps you can help this man." "Sit down," Frank Braun said. "What can I do for you?" But the man would not sit down. Shifting from one foot to the other and twisting his cap in his hand, he said, "Ich bin deserter. Si vous voulez mich outkicken, tun Sie de seguido." Frank Braun put the card down on the table. "If this gentleman has sent you here, he had a reason. Tell me, when did you come over here and how?" "Nicht hauer sure," the man answered. "Hey dos annos das ich gemoved bin." 12 years ago, he and two other men had deserted from the German Ulan regiment of St. Avold. His companions had persuaded him that it was stupid to finish their military service, that there would never be a war in Europe anyway, and that the army was there only to hold down the masses. So he escaped with them across the near border, but 2 weeks later he again wore a uniform, that of the French Legion. After a wild night of drinking, he had come to in a train to find that he was traveling to Marseille, and that he had enlisted with the Foreign Legion. He served in Algiers for 2 years until he had an opportunity to... I don't know why this fucking thing keeps shutting off on me at about the 1 or 2 or 3 minute mark, but here we are. He served in Algiers for 2 years until he had opportunity to escape again. He fled to Morocco, thence to Spain, and finally crossed the ocean to Argentina, where he found work as a guacho. Or is that gaucho? When the war broke out, he became restless and could not stay in the Pampas. He got a job as stoker on a steamer bound for New York from Buenos Aires. "And now you are stuck here and can't get over. Is that it?" Frank Braun asked. The man's story was not a new one. He had often heard similar yarns. The details might differ a little, but on the whole, it was always the same. From all parts of the world they had converged on New York, from Eastern Asia, from every part of the American continent, from Australia and the islands of the Pacific. They had come from Africa and from Spain and Portugal. Some had even come from England, and now they were all bogged here, could get no further. The Yankees saw to that. Frank Braun even knew the pidgin language this man spoke, A clumsy German sprinkled with Spanish, English, and French. Can't get over, senor, the man cried. Ich war deja 3 times in Europa this year. Nur nach Deutschland, that can't be done. Vamos. This man had been with horses all his life, grown up in a stable on an estate in the Rhineland, then a soldier in a German cavalry regiment, later orderly to the surgeon in the Foreign Legion, and finally a gaucho in the Argentine Pampas. Wherever he had been, he had something to do with horses. We are reading, well, I'm not, I'm reading it, you aren't. Heinz Ewers' Vampire, a book which has greatly disappointed me up to this point, but there's still a chance that it can salvage itself. I doubt it. So he finally arrived in New York, and after many weary weeks had found out it was impossible to get over to Germany, and had decided to make war against the Allies single-handed. He saw that stable boys were needed badly to act as watchmen for the immense transports of horses and mules going over to Italy, France, and England. Only the flotsam of humanity could be found for this work, and therefore the authorities did not bother much about papers and documents, and he, black-haired and tanned, with his impossible mixture of languages, could play French to the English and Spanish to the French. He soon found a job on a transport of horses bound for Cherbourg, and then with another for Saloniki. Ernst Rosius turned upon him furious. So you brought horses to our enemies, did you? The man grinned a broad grin, showing a few black stumps of teeth. He put his cap down on the table and addressed the secretary. The Allies would not get much satisfaction out of those horses, he said. Did he know what Malian was? No, Malian was the best bacillus that transferred glanders. How he had got it, Frank Braun asked. How had he got it, Frank Braun asked. Oh, one could get anything in New York for money. He had smeared that stuff into the nostrils of the horses, one by one, hoping they would infect others too. The third time they had caught him, he was to accompany a transport to Portsmouth, this time 2,000 horses. He had to start right in with his work while they were still in New York Harbor. He had poisoned 27 horses when the Canadian officer caught him. He fled, racing up the companionway on deck, the officer right behind him, emptying his revolver at him. A bullet hit him in the left arm, but it only grazed his skin and did not hurt much. So he had jumped overboard, swum across the harbor, and made his getaway. When did that happen? Frank Braun asked. Last night, but that wasn't all. He had walked up and down the waterfront until his clothes were dry, after first washing the bleeding arm and bandaging it with his handkerchief. And the handkerchief probably was dirty and must have been in contact with the poison, because he painfully turned up the sleeve of his coat, showing his arm. It was swollen and almost purple, in some spots even green and black. Thick blue lymph strands radiated in all directions from the small bullet wound. That was why he had come. He could not go to any doctor. That would mean immediate arrest, and it was high time that something was done. He knew the effect of the poison. In Sidi Bel Abbas, one of the surgeon's assistants, had become infected and had died in spite of all the hospital treatment. Frank Braun thought rapidly, then went to the telephone and called the number. He talked for a long time, and finally he sat down and wrote an address, which he handed to his secretary. Get a taxicab and take the man to this address. Then he turned to the man. The physician is a Jew. Just give him your name and address. He won't ask questions. He will keep you in his clinic until you get well. Well, nous verrons, Corojo, the man said. La der arm must runter. Dan, could I be saved? Puet être famos. It wouldn't matter about me. Jamais en fiche. If I could only poison the Franzosen and und Englander knocked a few thousand potros. Hasta luego, Monsieur Darf ich ask you, knock a favor. La sewed in my coat are my Ersparnis, Mas als $500. Pay den doctor, damn it. When Erden dinero will not den entero. Ich pfeif darauf. Et li rest. Geben sie dem Red Cross. Ferd and fall that I die. Bien compris. Au revoir, caballero. Muchísimas gracias. Frank Braun tried to rise to shake hands with the man. His legs trembled and he sank back into his chair. Excuse me, please, he said. I am not very well myself. The secretary rushed over to him, lifting him up by the armpits. Lie down on the sofa, doctor, and rest a while. Frank Braun refused to be helped. With an effort, he pulled himself up, supporting himself by the table, and stumbled over to the sofa. Shall I tell Fred to bring you some lunch? Rosius asked. No. Then take a little rest, doctor. Lie down for a few hours. And don't forget, you are speaking tonight at the German Chamber of Commerce. You must be fresh for that. I will call for you about 9 o'clock. He threw a heavy blanket over Frank Braun, moved up a low table, and got a glass of water and the strychnine pills. Perhaps you might like to take one. Sometimes it helps. Frank Braun nodded. He wanted to ask Rosius to disconnect the telephone, but he could not open his lips, and his brain seemed incapable of concentrating on any action. It does not matter, he thought. My body would not be able to carry it out anyway. He heard the two men leave, heard a door being opened and shut, and another further away. Everything was quiet now. He was cold, and his teeth chattered. He wanted to stop the chattering by pressing them together, but he couldn't. Then he tried to find a rhythm in the chattering of his teeth, but there was none. They chattered away, now faster, now slower, stopping for a second and beginning again. He made an effort to reach for the water, but could not move his arm. His telephone rang. It rang, shrilled, screamed again and again. The noise bored into his ears, hammering cruelly against his brain. He pulled up the blanket, hid his head under it, and stuffed his fingers into his ears. No use. It rang and barked and bellowed endlessly, piercing him with 1,000 sharp knives. Finally, it goaded him to his feet. He stood now, trembling and tottering, but he stood. He stumbled through the room, fell down on a chair, and lifted the receiver. Lottie, yes? Why had he kept her waiting? He had not heard it ring, but for a quarter of an hour. No, no. This motherfucker's really going to test my patient here. Patient. My patient? Yeah, I've got patience. Was he sick? I mean, where the hell was I now? The opening of the door, soft step. No, no. All right, I guess I'll go up to here. But no, nothing. His hand trembled so he could hardly hold the receiver, and his voice was sobbing. Was he sick? No, but he must be. She could hear it. Well, yes, he was, just a little. She was out in Atlantic City. But she would take the next train to New York. Was he going to speak tonight? Yes, of course he would speak. Then she would expect him for tea. Yes, yes, he would come. He hung up the receiver, cold sweat breaking from his pores. His arms hung down limply at his sides, and his head dropped against his chest. He knew. Now he would fall from the chair. Then he would lie on the floor and would forget everything. Again, a sound that kept him from falling. The opening of a door, a soft step. It was Fred, his old manservant, standing before him, dumb and soulless. Fred? What was he doing here? He hadn't rung for him, so he said, "Get my bath ready. Make it hot, very hot." Fred said, "Yes, sir," and walked across the room, took a silver platter from the mantelpiece, and put a card on it. Then he came back and held the platter out to Frank Braun. "The lady wishes to see you, sir." Frank Braun scanned the card but could not read the words. He heard the thin, rasping voice say "the lady," but it did not convey anything to him. He thought, "Why don't you go away, you beast? You torment me." Instead, he merely nodded and said yes. Then he murmured, "My bath." He watched the old man leave the room, listened again to the soft, muffled steps on the rug. Somewhere somebody spoke, and there were more steps, and suddenly a heavily veiled woman stood before him. "Who are you?" he whispered. He thought, "Lottie? But why the black veil? For whom did she wear mourning? For him? But he was alive. He was still alive. "Who are you?" he whispered again. Now he heard her voice. Why, what was it she was saying? Oh, Spanish. She lifted her veil. He could see her now. She was the dancer, La Goyita. Dolores Echeverria. Her dark sapphire blue eyes sparkled. Was he sick, she asked. He nodded. Yes, a little. He was very tired. She said that she had come from Sonora, that she had arrived only yesterday in New York with her wolf and the hurdy-gurdy man. She had promised to bring him mescal buttons, and here they were. She opened her bag, took out a little kerchief, untied it, and showed him the dried cactus. He sat up instantly. "That will help," he said eagerly. "Let's do it. Right away, at once." With shaking hands, he took the kerchief and plugged the electric cord into the socket. "Water," he cried. "Fred, water!" The servant came and filled the kettle. "Your bath is ready, sir. Have you any further orders for me?" Frank Braun stared at him, shaking his head. "No," and go away. His man silently left the room. Frank Braun tried to lift up the tea kettle, but he had to put it down. His hands shook so he supported his arms on the chair and lifted the kettle, breathing heavily. The dancer had followed his movements with her eyes. "What are you trying to do?" she asked. "Make tea from the peyote fruit." "Tss, perhaps that will help." She took the kettle out of his hands and put it on the electric grill. "Let me do it." Then she dropped the yellow mescal buttons into the kettle. He said, "Thank you. I would like to take a bath and lie before I drink the tea." The Goyita nodded. "Yes, go. Your tea will be ready." He went into the bathroom and undressed. He tried the water with his hand. It was scalding hot. Nevertheless, he got into the tub and stretched out his legs. It felt as if his body must burn in this heat. Then he accustomed himself to the hot water and lay there quietly without sitting or stirring. I'm really botching this, but I am, in my defense, I'm really tired. Then he accustomed himself to the hot water and lay there quietly without stirring. He was not asleep and he was not awake. He did not think. There was nothing except a great void. Nothing without and nothing within. Absolutely nothing. Then he felt cold. He got out of the tub and rubbed himself dry. He put on his pajamas and his bathrobe and went back to the living room. The tea kettle and a cup stood on the little table beside the sofa. He sat down, poured the dark brew into the cup, and drank. Then he heard a voice. "How does it taste?" He looked up. La Goyita was still there. "Very bitter. You had a long bath," she continued. "I am getting worried about you. I was going to ring for your man. Do you think The mescal tea will help. He shrugged his shoulders. Maybe, I don't know. They tell marvelous things about it down in Mexico. Do you know anything about it? It is intoxicating, a strange intoxication, very different from any other. I tried them all a long time ago: opium, hashish, muscarine, digitalin, ganga, cocaine, and many others. Nothing acts like mescal. It is a strange intoxication. It makes you see colors, bright colors. I would like to try it, the Goyita said. Is it harmful? Harmful? He smiled painfully. No, it is not harmful. It may be easy to become a morphine, a drunkard, a hashish eater, but one cannot become a mescal addict. You yourself know how difficult it is to get it. She fetched herself a cup and sat down beside him. Pour me some, please. He filled her cup to the brim. Aren't you afraid? You will, you will, you will be intoxicated. You will lie here unconscious for several hours, and you are in a strange house with a stranger. The dancer turned upon him her large sapphire eyes. No, she said slowly and deliberately, I'm not afraid. Not of you. He thought, no, you really need not worry. I am so weak, so miserable, and I, too, will be in a stupor. You are quite safe. Oh, but aloud, he said, close the door, please, and lock it. She did as he bade her, came back, and drank her tea. Another, please, she asked. He filled both cups again. They drank. There was something that drew him to this woman. She smiled. What now? I am curious. He fell back on the sofa, utterly exhausted from this effort. She noticed how tired he was and kindly adjusted the cushions under his head. Are you comfortable? She asked. Thank you, he whispered. Sit over there in the large chair. Take a few cushions and lean back and open your blouse. You should be able to breathe freely and have nothing pressing against your heart. He saw, but veiled, as if looking through a dense fog, that she was doing something to her dress, that she walked over to the leather chair, put cushions in it, and stretched out. Do you know a copla of the rumba? He whispered. Please sing it to me until you fall asleep. Subtly, very softly, she hummed. La rumbita que... I'm not reading that. I don't know the language, so you can look at it and read it if you want. Monotonously, she hammered the melody, repeating the words over and over. He tried to reconstruct in his mind the picture of her dancing before Villa and his generals, but all he could see was Villa's ugly ape-like face and the eagle-nosed visage of his aide. And then he saw the dancer's head. Sapphire blue eyes mounted in white, and a black circle around him. Now he was asleep. A click, and suddenly the room was flooded with bright light, blinding him. People, faces bending over him. Lottie Van Ness was standing there with Ernst Rosius. Behind them, the old servant quietly picked up the little table that had been knocked over and gathered up the broken teacups. Frank Braun's arms dropped to his side and something fell from his hand. Fred picked it up and put it on the table. It was Lottie's little knife. She saw it instantly, reached for it, but checked her hand in midair. With parted lips, she stared at him and turned away and stared around the room. And now she saw the sleeping woman in the armchair. The Goyita's head had drooped over the arm of the chair, and her hands hung down limply. Her bodice was unfastened. Lottie rushed across the room and bent over the sleeping woman. She screamed a shrill and piercing scream. Then she hurried back to the sofa, picked up the knife, and looked at it. I knew it, she cried. I knew it. Frank Braun reached in the sleeve of his robe for his handkerchief and wiped the perspiration off his forehead. What do you know, Lottie? Without answering, she went back to the Goyita and fastened her dress. Lift her up, she commanded. Carry her out into my car. With Fred's help, Rosia stood her on her feet. The dancer stumbled and reeled, but she stood. Opening her blue eyes wide, she mumbled incoherent words and threatened to fall again. The men supported her, and she closed her eyes and allowed herself to be taken outside. Lottie Van Ness walked slowly over to Frank Braun. Her lips were trembling. She was trying to say something and could not find the words. Her slim fingers nervously played with the knife. You, she whispered finally, you. She could not continue. A violent sobbing shook her and tears welled up in her eyes. He stretched out his hand to her. What is wrong, Lottie? But she merely shook her head, turned sharply, and walked out without a word. He listened to her step, to the voices outside in the street, and to the roar of the motor as her car drove away at high speed. What had happened? Then his secretary came back and ran to the telephone. It was ringing steadily. Yes, yes, he called into the mouthpiece. We are coming right away. We are already. Yes. The doctor will be on the stage in 10 minutes. Absolutely. He hung up the receiver and asked Fred to get a taxi cab. Then he turned to Frank Braun. We have to hurry, doctor. It is past 9 already. You'll have to dress. How do you feel? How did he feel? He took a few steps, tested his muscles. Heavens, he was feeling better than he had for many months. He undressed quickly, jumped under a cold shower while young Rosius laid out his tailcoat, shirt, tie, and pumps. A nice mess that was. The secretary laughed. Mrs. Van Ness is awfully jealous. To find a strange lady here with you, sleeping, and with her dress open too. Was she pretty? I couldn't get a look at her in all this excitement. Frank Braun rubbed himself dry and reached for his shirt. Why the devil did you break down the door? He asked finally. Because it was locked, of course. Wait, here. Here. There is a button missing in the back. Here is your collar. We stood in front of your door for more than half an hour, calling to you and shouting ourselves hoarse. Then we kicked and trampled against the door, but got no answer. All we could hear were moans. We thought God knows what happened to you. I was asleep, Frank Braun said calmly. I slept all the time you were away. I slept and dreamed a lot of silly nonsense. How did Miss Van Ness get here? Her car drove up just as I stepped into the house. I thought she had come to get you. Here is your waistcoat. And don't forget to button your trousers. The other day one of the buttons was open. That doesn't look so well when you are making a speech. He helped Frank Braun into his tails and held out his overcoat for him. Quick, quick, he cried. The taxi is waiting downstairs. What we got here? 4 more pages. As soon as he had finished his speech, he drove to Lottie's house and waited for her in the library, pacing up and down the room. At last she came, nodded, and beckoned him to sit down. Well, he asked. Well, she repeated. Well, what? Is it my turn to make explanations? He drummed on the table. As you like, Lottie, but don't think I am trying to hide anything from you. You might tell me how you happened to arrive so suddenly. She laughed. There is nothing to tell. I waited for you at 6 o'clock, and you did not come. I knew you were sick, so I called you up about 7. I sat with the telephone receiver in my hand for 3/4 of an hour. The operator did her best, but you must have disconnected your telephone. No, I didn't. I was asleep and I didn't hear it. You must have slept soundly, she laughed sarcastically. It rang all the time. Besides, you told me the same story at noon today. Yes, Lottie, I know, he admitted. When you called me up at noon today, I lied to you. I was lying on the sofa, and I felt very tired. I did not want to answer the telephone, but the ringing tormented me, so when I talked to you, I wanted to get through as quickly as possible. I said only yes and no because I did not want you to ask any questions and force me to give long answers. That is why I lied to you, to make it shorter. And now, she demanded, now I am speaking the truth. I did not hear anything. I was asleep. She sighed. All right, I believe you. Anyway, you did not answer, and that worried me. I waited a while. Then I called you again. Finally, I got into my car and drove down to your house. Just as I entered, I met your secretary. He helped to break in the door. You know the rest. Where is the girl? He asked. In there, the guest room. She is still asleep. My maid is with her. The physician was here a minute ago. He said she must have taken a very powerful drug, but he did not know what it was. He nodded eagerly. Yes, yes, she took mescal, 2 large cups full. I did, too. Then he told Lottie that it was the Spanish dancer he had mentioned before, the one he had met on the fever ship and who had performed in Torreon before General Villa. He told her the episode, how he had tried in vain to get mescal buttons and how La Goyita had promised to find him some. She had arrived quite unexpectedly at noon today, just as he had hung up the receiver. She had brought him the cactus buttons, and he had thought it might help. As a matter of fact, it had. He was feeling better now than he had in many months. Lottie Van Ness laughed loud. I should think you would. Is that why you boiled the stuff and drank it? And you gave the senorita a little, probably because she was curious and wanted to try it. Wasn't that it? That was exactly how it happened, he cried. She had heard people talk so much about mescal intoxication down in Mexico that she was curious to try it. You know, Lottie, she had more faith in me than you have. She jeered. Oh, yes, abundant faith, and you fully justified it. I know, I know. He sprung to his feet angrily and paced the room. I give you my word of honor, Lottie, that I did not touch her. He veered on him. She veered on him furiously. You lie. He swooped before her and repeated slowly, Lottie, I did not touch her. Then she opened her dress herself, did she? Lottie scoffed. Yes, he said quietly. She did it before we went to sleep. I on the sofa, and she in the chair. I told her to open her dress so she could breathe more easily. And she did. I don't care if you believe it or not, but I did not get up from the sofa and did not touch her all the time she was in my room. I did not even shake hands with her when she came in. Lottie shook her head. And yet you are lying. She walked over to a table and picked up his little knife, which she handed to him. He opened it. There were thick, dark spots on the blade. It is dirty, he said. What does that mean? Those spots are blood. Do you realize now that you were lying? He breathed deeply, holding on to himself with all his willpower. To hell with your stupid sorcery, he finally cried, flinging the knife into the fireplace. Tonight this thing has lied to you again. I want to tell you something, Lottie. At the party of Miss... let's try that again. At the party of the Moon Ladies, I was unfaithful to you. I took Amy Brightower, or rather, she took me, whichever you prefer. In any case, your knife remained spotless, and so you were sure that I had been faithful to you. And yet, as truly as I am standing here, I took her that night. What do I care? She cried contemptuously. He did not listen. And today is just the other way around. Today I really did not do anything, but your knife is bloody, and now you are jealous. She seized upon this word, jealous. You taught me that in 15 long years. If one can't go to sleep, if one lies in bed, awake, one night, another night, many nights, always thinking of. She sat down, burying her head in her hands. Jealous? Yes, I am of everything you do, but I am no more jealous of a woman than of the glass that touches your lips, the shirt that you wear, the bath into which you step. There is one thing alone, which I want to be mine. Just one thing. Her fingers gripped the arm of her chair. Today you took me from another woman. What you should take, only from me. Very softly, he said, Look here, Lottie. Why should I lie to you? I told you about the others, and you don't want to believe. But the Spanish girl I did not take. She snapped at him. Who was talking about that? Then you did not take her. Believe me, I know better than you do. He did not grasp her meaning. What do you mean? With a contemptuous shrug of her shoulders, she explained, It was a whim. I had her examined by my physician. His report is Virgo intacta. He stared at her, utterly failing to understand. Yes, but Lottie, what else could there be? How did I lie to you then? And what else do you want? She passed her hand warily across her forehead. Whether you took her or not, what does that matter? Whether you take any woman that crosses your path, what does that matter to me? No, don't say anything. You did it, and you are still doing it all the time. Keep on doing it. It hurts me when I find out. Yes, it still does, but you accustomed me to such pain. It passes. I can kiss you with a smile on my lips, and you do not even notice how it hurts. You taught me that, but this is different. But what is different, Lottie? He pleaded. She spoke very bitterly. You have a good pair of eyes. They see clearly, and yet you are blind. The little knife that you threw into the fire did not lie. It spoke the truth, and it told me everything you did. She sat down beside him. Look here, she continued. I will tell you what it is. The highest thing that a woman can do for the man she loves. What a mother would do for her only child, a savior for suffering humanity. You taught me to do it, taught me the most marvelous, the divine gift, and then you go and take it from someone else, anyone who happens to cross your path. You take it from one who does not even know what is happening and who, if she knew, would spit at you. Now you know. He heard every word, but he did not understand. Say it again, Lottie, he begged. Say it a little more clearly. She shook her head wearily. No, no, it is no use. You would not understand. Another time, perhaps? He reached for her hand and patted it softly. Try it now, please. Tell me tonight. Usually I am tired, worn out, and weak in brain and body, but tonight my head is clear. I feel well and strong. Tell me now. She tore her hand away and sprang to her feet. A violent sob shook her whole body. Strong, she cried. Well and strong. What from? I believe the tea helped me, the mescal, I mean. With a wild hysterical cry, she turned on him. The mescal? Blood, you mean, blood! And she quickly walked past him. He saw that tears were streaming down her pale cheeks, but her lips were laughing. You fool, you incurable, blind fool. She had gone, and he was standing in the room alone. And that's the end of chapter 10. Very anticlimactic, but that's the end of 10. And that's the end of this. The sooner it's over, the better. Goodbye, bruv. Goodbye.